السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam.
So, sir, we'll
Inshallah.
start in 2 minutes, 2-3 minutes. We'll just wait for more people to join.
So how's your day been, sir? I know this is a difficult time for all of us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a very tragic yet important occasion. Inshallah, I'll try my best to share some ideas with you.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum to all and welcome to informative session on Palestine history and conflict conducted by Qalam Youth Collective. We are delighted to have Janab Muhammad Makram Balawi Sahab with us, who is the president of Asia Middle East Forum. He's basically an academic of Palestinian origin, currently based in Istanbul, Turkey. He holds multiple posts at various Palestinian forums. As I said, he's the president of Asia Middle East Forum, AMEF. He's also the Director General of League of Parliamentarians for Al-Quds. He's also acting president of Palestinian Academic Union of Palestinian Academics, UPA, and is also the co-founder of Al-Quds Foundation Malaysia. Welcome to have you, sir, for this talk. We are really delighted to have you with us.
Thank you, brother. I'm really honored.
Jazakallah. So to begin with, I'll just go take you all through a few of the historical events that have occurred. As you know, the talk is on the history and context of this issue of Palestine. So as we all know that since ancient times, Palestine has been a very sought after place, a respectable place for all three major religions, three major faiths of this world. And there was no issue at all. In fact, Christians, Muslims, and Jews were living side by side together for centuries. And in fact, there is a very good tradition of so much of harmony between Christians and Muslims that there are keys of churches in Palestine still being into the custody of Muslim families who go and open the locks of those churches. And this has been the tradition for generations. So there was no issue at all in that holy land. And as we all know that this issue began with the Zionist movement started in the late of 19th century. So, sir, we want you to first take us through the historical context. I think the beginning of the Zionist movement and then to the Balfour Declaration. How did this issue start? Yeah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ahmadullah wa salli ala nabiyhi al-Kareem. Brothers and sisters, I'm really honored to be with you. I would like to thank Brother Kamran and Qalam Academy for inviting me. We witness now a very historic event that most probably will change the face of the Middle East, West Asia, and most probably it will affect in a way or in another the rest of the world. Basically, to begin with, many people may think that Palestine is a very big country and very populated country, which is not true. Palestine is a very, very small country. It's almost like a strip of land. And in that country, when the Zionists invaded Palestine, the population wasn't more than maybe 1 million or 1.5 million. Although currently the Palestinian people is about 12 to 14 million people, but they are scattered all over the world. Yet, the importance of Palestine stems from the fact that Palestine is a crossroads of the old world. The meaning that Palestine is geographically situated in a place where Asia and Africa are connected. And from that place, it's also very close to Turkey, which also connects with the Europeans. And historically, you know, civilization was more advanced in the East, in India and China. So all the goods of the East used to brought to Gaza port in Palestine by Arab traders even before Islam. For that reason, now you find many Indians who descend from Arab origin in Malabar and also in Sri Lanka, in Indonesia, Malaysia, etc., because Arabs used to be traders. And if you refer to the Holy Quran in Surah Quraysh, the Quran tells us about two journeys. Arab in Mecca used to make two journeys, one in winter and another one was in summer. The one which was in summer, it used to be to Gaza mainly, because Gaza is the closest place and Palestine is the closest place to the Arabian Peninsula.
Right.
Before Islam, also Palestine was very much sought after by the big empires like the Egyptian Empire and the Persian Empire, the Roman Empire, etc. Because if you control that piece of land, you control the whole of business and global trade. You control the center of civilization in the old world.
Right.
Of course, we can't deny that India and China, they had a very influential and advanced civilization, but historically, as all of us would acknowledge that the center of the old world was in that part, the Mediterranean mainly.
Right.
So after Islam, actually before Islam, the Romans were controlling Palestine, and Muslims came from the Arabian Peninsula during the time of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and they liberated the whole country, including other countries like Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon now, Egypt, etc. These countries were occupied by the Romans. The Romans were not indigenous people. They were Europeans and their capital was Rome. But
Right,
the people of the land, they were mixtures of people, partly Arabs, and there are a lot of people descending from what is now known as Semitic races. It's not
Right.
only Jews, because Jews, they try to define Semitism as Jewish only, which is not true, of course.
Right. So one question,
So,
sir, sorry to interrupt you. One question. So Netanyahu recently claimed that during the Arab conquest of the Palestine and Syria, it were Arabs who drove out the Jews. So from your argument, it is clear that it were not the Arabs who drove out the Jews, but previously the Romans and other conquerors had already drawn out the Jews from that historic land.
yeah, actually, if you refer to the agreement which was signed by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu with the Bishop of Al-Quds, Jerusalem, in that agreement, Christians of Jerusalem, they stated that they don't want the city to be open for Jews. And they stated that Muslims should work on expelling Jews and thieves from the city.
Okay.
So Jews and thieves from like that. And up to the modern age, even Christian Palestinians, you know, Palestinians are mainly Muslims who are the majority, and Christians. Christians nowadays are about 1%, 2%, something like that. The Christians, Palestinian Christians, were more sensitive to Jews and Zionism than Muslims, because historically they have that kind of animism.
Right.
So,
right. So
yeah,
it was not
please.
the Muslims who drove out the Jews. In fact, Muslims allowed them to enter and live in Jerusalem and Palestine.
Historically, Muslims, you know, they didn't have any kind of sensitivities towards Jews. After all, Jews were very few in number, and they had a fatwa, that is a religious decree, that it is not allowed to stay in Palestine, to live in Palestine, because they believe that God actually punished them by banishing them from the Holy Land. So whoever used to come to pray for some time and go back, as Muslims do now when they go to Mecca and go back to their homelands.
Right.
So basically, Palestinians and Muslims who were controlling Palestine, Palestine was only a province of a huge country called the Ottoman state, and
Right.
before that, other states. They didn't care much about Jews because they always thought that these people, they come for worship, they come for a short time and go back. So we didn't have that kind of sensitivity.
Right. So there are still Orthodox Jews in Palestine and at other places who are not Zionists and who consider the formation of Israel as acting against the will of God. So,
in fact, my brother-in-law, his mother is Jewish in origin.
okay.
But she converted to Islam, and her brothers now, they live inside what is now known as Israel. You know, most of these people are common people. They look for their own livelihood. They are not necessarily Zionists.
Right.
Mhm.
Right, sir.
Absolutely.
So,
But we have also to remember that there are very few in number. Jews in Palestine initially were very few, maybe hundreds or few thousands. And Christians, of course, they were more. They, at some stage, they represented about 18% of the population. The majority was always Muslims. But there is also a historical fact that when Muslims established their state in what is we call now in Arabic Bilad al-Sham or the Levant, they did not force people to convert from Christianity to Islam. It took them more than 4 centuries to become the majority there. It's only after the Crusade, the local Arab Christians, they compared their fellow European Christians with the Arab Muslims, and they found that Islam gave them justice and safety, dignity. So the majority converted to Islam, and Muslims in the 5th Hijri century became the majority in that area.
Right. So you are making some very important points, sir. So the claim by the Zionists that Arabs drew out the native population and inhabited those places is absolutely false. In fact, it took around 5 centuries for Muslims to become the majority of that land, majority population.
True, and it is a well-known fact that Netanyahu is a big liar. He is not a scholar. He is not historian. He just fabricates things. So whatever he says is not necessarily authentic or agreed upon, even Jews and inside Israel itself. He's just fabricating things to justify whatever Zionist ideas he has.
Right. So
I would like to just, Kamran bhai, add something interesting here. Just an observation from my side in India, right? So I think it is not a secret anymore that the current Indian government, to some extent, also has a lot of sympathy for this Zionist movement, and we even see in the Indian context this fear mongering of, oh, India might become a Muslim majority country. So very related to the topic we are seeing here is, of course, cultures change. Like you said, 4 centuries it took for the Muslims to become a majority. This is just a natural change in culture and religious beliefs. It doesn't necessarily mean that one group is trying to overpower someone else forcibly or something like this.
And in fact, in the historic land of Palestine and Syria, there are many native Christians. In fact, in Lebanon, there are still many Christians, despite all the infighting and the crisis in Middle East, wherein Christians and other peoples left. But in some countries like Lebanon, especially, there are still lots of Christian population. Even in Palestine, there are places near Jerusalem where Christians are still there. Yeah. So, sir,
now,
in fact, Kamran bhai.
Sorry.
Yeah. Continue, sir. Continue, sir. Yeah.
The Christians are dwindling in numbers for different reasons. Reason number one that European countries and the West in general, they made it easy for Palestinian Christians to get visas and citizenship. So many of them migrated even before the Zionist occupation came. So their percentage actually came down. And another thing, that their social system is a bit different from their fellow Muslim citizens, because they usually marry late and they don't have a lot of kids, maybe one or two, something like. They're more affected with the Western culture. And I think also the occupation made it very difficult for them to live in such harsh environment, although many of them were known for facing the occupation fiercely. I would like to mention here that one of the most radical organizations in the history of the Palestinian conflict is the Popular Front, Democratic Front of Palestine, Liberation of Palestine, which was founded by Dr. George Habash. And Dr. Wadi Haddad is also a Christian who was known to be a very renowned terrorist in the West. And I would like also to mention that many Christians actually still up to now convert to Islam. Palestinian Christians, every now and then you hear that somebody converted to Islam. Now, one of the most renowned Muslim thinkers and philosophers, Mr. Munir Shafiq, he was Christian and he converted to Islam. And this is very common in almost everywhere in the Muslim world. But now we are talking about Palestine.
So great, sir. So now moving on to the Zionist movement. So in 1896, they had the first conference of the Zionist movement. And we all know that Theodor Huz published a paper called the Der Judenstaat in 1896. That's when we count the beginning of the modern Zionist movement. And so Zionist movement has started, and Jews, in fact, the Zionists were exploring other places as well, not just Palestine. So there were talks of Uganda and South America as well, besides the issue of Palestine. So they were also looking for other places initially.
Actually, we have to know that the Zionist project is not a Jewish project. It's a European colonial project. And Europeans and Christians in general, they believe that Arabs invaded their Holy Land, took over and kicked them out of the Holy Land. Because of that, they always had crusades, 9 of them. They invaded the Holy Land, Palestine, Egypt, and Syria now. And they felt that the Ottomans in particular, they are now acting as if a modern United States in Europe. So they use always to interfere in the politics, European politics, and impose rulers on people, and what they should do and what they shouldn't do, and also sometimes meddle in resolving some internal issues in Europe, etc. So for centuries, they thought that the Ottoman state is a kind of hegemon that they should get rid of. So when the Ottomans became weak, the Europeans came of the idea that they should plant a state or an entity in the Muslim world, especially which was under the Ottoman, to keep the area busy with itself and divide the people, especially to place it on that critical geographic situation between the continents. And this was attempted, I think, first by Napoleon. Napoleon tried to do that, but he failed, and eventually the idea wasn't very much popular. But in the beginning of the 20th century, there is a segment of Jews, they picked up the idea and worked on it.
Right, sir. So we have...
So
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
18.
sir, you mentioned that.
Yeah, please, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So, sir, you mentioned that it is the colonial project, because the Western powers, they always saw the Ottoman Empire as a threat for their existence. In fact, it was the Ottoman Empire which took the attack to them, as per se, because if you can say, you talked about crusades. This whole thing started from crusades, and this current state which is existing there, uh, the crusades were the start of this. Is it the continuation of the crusade? Is it the continuation of the crusade?
For some people,
Can we
it
say that
is.
it is a continuation of the crusade?
Yeah.
For some people, it is, because the Crusades themselves, they had the appearance of religious war, but in fact, it wasn't about that. It was about centering power and conquering the rest of the basin of the Mediterranean. Because before Christianity, Europeans attempted to occupy that place. As I told you earlier, Romans were controlling. They occupied the place. They were not Christians. But when they adopted Christianity, they gave it some kind of religious attire, if you may say. So basically, Europeans, Christian Europeans, they convinced everybody that Arabs, they came from the Arabian Peninsula and they occupied their land. So it's always a controversy. Where does history begin? Is it from the time Muslims liberated Palestine and the rest of the Arab countries, or when the Ottoman occupied that land, or before that? So everyone actually chooses the point of history which is favorable to him.
Right, sir. So I think there are a few differences basically between crusades and the modern occupation or the colonization of Palestine by the Jews. First being that the native Christians are calling themselves Palestinians. They are against the state of Israel. Most majority of those are like that. And besides, this is the project of Israel can be equated to the colonization of the Americans or the Australia, or so it's like a project to colonize and ethically cleanse the local people and then form a state like they did in Australia, New Zealand, and so many other colonies.
Yes, this is called the colonial settler project. Yeah, because colonialists, for example, in India, they did not attempt to change the population or make demographic changes. They wanted to loot everything and build their own country with the riches of India. But the case in South Africa, in Australia is different. So they attempted to do the same thing in Palestine with a major difference, that they did not care very much for the riches of Palestine because it's a very small piece of land. They cared more on destroying any possibility for Muslims to rise and become a future threat to the European empires and the West in general.
Right, sir. So now moving on to carrying on this discussion forward. So in 1917, Balfour Declaration was signed, and the Britain basically promised the Jews for a homeland in Palestine. This is when we can say that officially Palestine was designated as a place for Jews or a Jewish homeland. And then the Ottoman Empire was also becoming weak following the World War I. And then we all know that Palestine became a British mandate, which was called Mandatory Palestine, which means that it came under the occupation or the ruling of the British. So this is when we see that mass immigration of Jews starts. Jewish people from all across the Europe and other places start going and occupying, buying lands initially, and then organizing themselves into groups and then attacking Palestinians. So this is when we see the conflict exactly begins to start. So what are your thoughts between this period, 1819 to 1947, when Palestine was a mandate, British mandate?
In the Arab world, Arabs in general, especially the ruler of Mecca, Sharif Hussein bin Ali, they were convinced that the Ottoman state is dying and the people who are coming into power, they're Freemasons, you know?
Yeah.
And they adopted European ideas, especially nationalism, and they adopted Turkish nationalism, and they want to impose some kind of racial superiority over the Arabs. On the other side, Arabs also picked up the same kind of thinking because it was actually one state, and these people who were opposing each other, they were colleagues, classmates, they actually intermarried with each other. But you know, when differences appear, things become like that. So actually, the British approached Sharif Hussein and that segment of Arabs who wanted to get rid of the Freemasons who were controlling the dying Ottoman Empire, and convinced them, why don't you be the leader of Muslims? You're descending from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You are an Arab, you are from Quraysh, and there are a lot of fatwas that justify your claim for the throne. And that actually what happened. They cooperated with the British occupation, and when the British went in, they conquered the Ottoman army and whoever was resisting them, and they entered Jerusalem. They exposed their real intention. Okay. And the army, the chief, who was called back then General Qalam, I believe, he said, now the Crusades end. Now the Crusades end, meaning that now we defeat Muslims, the final defeat, so we don't need any more Crusades. So now, at that point, many people awake, you know, they awoke and they knew that this is European colonialism, and they actually fell in the trap. Of course, Turkey itself was in a very miserable condition. The rest of the Muslim countries, India was occupied.
Right.
Malaya also was occupied. Colonialism was everywhere in Africa, right. Asia, and as I told you, even Turkey itself. Yeah. Afterwards, Istanbul itself was occupied.
Right, sir. Yeah.
Yes.
So, so Palestine remains as a British mandate up until 1947, when in November the UN takes control of Palestine and basically partitions it. So this is the first partition of the historic land of Palestine done by the UN, and after that, Israel, I think, gets most of the land, around 55%, and rest come to the Palestinians. But the land given to the Jews were more arable, better lands as compared to those allocated to the Palestinians. And then we see that in 1948, the first Arab-Israel war starts. And we all know that during this period of British mandate, the Jews were basically favored by the British Empire. They were equipped with arms, with trainings and all. So in this battle, the first Arab-Israel war, which was fought in 1948, Palestinians or Arabs in general were a weaker side. And that's when they win the war and the Nakba happens. The Palestinians are driven out of their lands. I think 7 lakh Palestinians were driven out of their lands. So yeah, so take us through that, sir. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to mention that the Lord Balfour, before becoming the Foreign Affairs Minister, he was PM, Prime Minister of Britain, before becoming Foreign Affairs Minister. And when he was Prime Minister, they actually made a law that prevents Jews, European Jews, of migrating to United Kingdom. And same happened in the US as well. So they did not want to get Jews who were fleeing the genocide in East Europe and different parts of Europe.
Yeah.
And they decided that they should kick them to another place, which is Palestine. Jews, basically, they are not all the same. So many people, especially those who lived in the Muslim world, they did not want to migrate to Palestine because they were nationals living there for hundreds of years, enjoying full rights. So they did not see any necessary necessity to migrate to a foreign country. Especially many of them that believe that they disobeying God by migrating to Palestine. So the Jews, the Zionist movement, they created an environment to pressurize these people. They detonated a lot of bombs, killed many Jews, made it unsafe for them. So they started migrating to Palestine. And this is, of course, not only stories. If you go to Middle East Eye, for example, there is a website called Middle East Eye. You listen to Avi Shalayim. Avi Shalayim is a Jewish Iraqi who his family migrated to Palestine and he became Israelis. When he grew up, he became a professor in history. So he discovered the truth. He left Palestine or Israel, and now he's living in the UK teaching in Oxford University. He gives you solid proofs that the Zionist movement was behind the bombs that attacked Iraqi Jews in the 50s. So this is their plan. The majority of the population, of course, was Palestinians, Arabs, you may say, and they wanted to ethnically cleanse the land because they had a motto, a land without people for people without a land. So the land without people is Palestine, but Palestine was full of Palestinians. Many cities and a very developed people lived there. It was the most developed country in the region, actually, and people used to come to Palestine to work from neighboring countries, as people do when they go and to the Gulf for work. So basically, they, with the help of the British, who appointed Viceroy, the British Viceroy was actually a Jew. Whoever oversaw Palestine, I think I forgot his name, but he was a British Jew who prepared for the declaration of the Jewish state of Israel. So when the British left, by the way, they left, I think, India in 1947, isn't it? In Palestine, they left in 1948. So immediately the Zionist movement was well prepared because the British put all the bases, military bases, equipment, military equipment, weapons at the disposal of the Zionist gangs. And because of that, they were able to defeat 4 or 6 Arab armies who were less in number and less trained, less equipped. And as you know, that resulted in a huge ethnic cleansing where many people fled Palestine, including my family.
So, sir, basically, what you are saying is that there were deliberate attempts from the Europeans or the British to kick out the Jews living in other Arab lands peacefully. And as Professor Avi Shalom has said in his interviews also, that he was an Iraqi Jew who lived peacefully in Iraq and probably in Baghdad, and he was made to flee that place, not because of his free will, but because of force, because of bombs that were detonated there. So, anti-Semitism has been a problem in Europe. It has not been a problem in Muslim lands, basically. So this was the background when they wanted to basically drive out or kick out all the Jews from their lands and make them migrate to Palestine. So as you said that there were wars fought. First was the 1948, and then after that in 1967, and then in 1973. So all these three Arab-Israel wars, basically Israel was favored by the British, by the Western powers, and they were able to make victories in all these three. So, yeah.
If you don't mind, I would just like to bring in something. This is not so much a comment, but a question, right? Because we are just moving through a particular period in history just now, in which there is an aspect that we should probably discuss just for parity and maybe asymmetry, right? Just for fairness, let's say. The period between 1939 to 45, where the Jews went through a huge devastation and lost 6 million of them. How does that, like, the effect of that, uh, how did that affect what happened moving forward in terms of the creation of the Jewish state, and in terms of let's say the Nakba of 1948? Uh, let's say, what was the Europe's interest regarding that, and how were the Arabs reacting to that? Let's say. So that's something I would like to also understand, as how that connects to the rest of the story.
You mean the rise of Nazism and the
Yes.
actions they took against Jews, right? Yeah.
Yes, I just want to understand how that how that influenced the history moving forward of of this land.
Right, sir.
As I told you earlier, Palestinians were not opposed to any Jews coming and living in Palestine as a Palestinian citizen. But when they came in numbers and the British mandate facilitated their coming, and it was very clear that they are going to build their racist state in Palestine, the people of the land became very alerted, and they resisted. They resisted the British, and they resisted the Zionist movement. So clashes used to erupt every now and then. And as you said earlier, there was an internal discussion in the Zionist movement itself. Why should they be placed in Palestine in particular? There are a lot bigger places, and they have the potentials like Rhodesia, for example. Now it is called Zimbabwe.
Right.
So Rhodesia was actually an option. But no, actually, the Europeans, they had a very very clear goal in their minds. They wanted to place the Zionist movement in the heart of the Muslim world and the Arab world for the reasons and objectives I referred earlier. So basically, if you remember, when Jews were persecuted in Andalus, that is, I think, in 15th century,
right, sir.
they migrated to the Muslim world.
Right.
And that is the term Sephardi or Sephardim comes from here. Safar means to travel or to migrate.
Right. Yeah.
I think the same word also applies in Urdu, isn't it?
That's right.
Yes,
So
yes.
actually, they migrated to the Muslim world, and it was Muslims who adopted them, protected them, gave them land and housing, and took care of them. And just recently, President Erdogan was reminding them of this fact.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I recently heard a very old speech from Joe Biden, the current president of America, saying if there was no Israel, we would have to invent an Israel. So that goes very much in line with what you're saying here, is that this is not so much necessarily a Jewish interest, but more, European colonialism taking on, sort of hiding itself, shrouding itself in let's say, Jewish interests, and then using that as a way to move forward their colonialist ideas. Yeah.
I guess if you are interested in that point in particular, you could refer to the writings and speeches of Noam Chomsky.
Right,
Noam
sir.
Chomsky is the biggest and the most well-known American modern philosopher. He's Jew, and many of those who oppose Israel, they are Jews because they know what Israel is and what kind of destructions it brings on Jewry of the world.
Right, sir. Yeah. So I think we should move forward now. Yeah. So coming to the phase after the three wars, which means after the 1970s. Yeah. Do you have
Yeah.
anything?
So there is a question which I have in mind. There were three wars that were fought: 1948, then in, I guess, 67, and then in 73.
Yeah.
So the Arab states which fought those wars, were they actually defeated, or they were acting on the orders of their masters, the colonial masters?
Well, there is a big argument about that, but we have to acknowledge that all the states, Arab states, which were established after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, they are failed states.
Right.
They couldn't accomplish much in terms of economy, maybe also development, interrelations, etc. And they became very small fragments, Like, I'll give you just one example. UP state in India. What's the population of UP state in India? I think now should be about 300 million people.
It's bigger than Russia.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
300 million sounds
Around
right.
300 million. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. This is a population of more than half of the Arab world. So now we are talking about 21 states. A place like Bahrain, UAE, they hardly have any local population. So you could imagine that these states, they are called states, but they're in no way matched to the Europeans or to the Americans.
Right, sir.
So, sir, continuing in this regard, the question which arises is that before the Balfour Declaration, when the World War I was happening, and the states which came into existence after World War I, so were they also created by the colonial project to act to disunite the Muslim world?
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah, continue.
We all know the agreement which divided Turkey, Iraq, and Syria. It is called the
Sykes-Picot Agreement.
Yeah. That agreement is very important in our history because it divided one country into too many countries, and sometimes they have differences and wars among them. So they divided us, and they kept us very, very weak. Sykes-Picot is not just an agreement. It actually decided the future of the whole Arab world, the most important part of the Arab world, and in extension, the rest of the Muslim world and Ummah.
Right, sir. So one question which I was to ask you later in the talk, but since this has come up, why are the Westerners, I mean the British, the US guys, so much interested in Israel than the Jews themselves? Like we see that there are Jews who oppose Israel, who call themselves non-Zionists, but then there are Christians, basically Europeans, Westerners, who are more interested in the creation of, who are more Zionists than Jews themselves. Why are they so interested?
They're not so Christian, they're more Europeans. But sorry, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, I suggest that you refer to books written by Edward Said, especially Orientalism.
Yeah.
Orientalism is very important book, and also to the writings of Noam Chomsky, as I said earlier. because they clarify this point very clearly. There is a book called Covering Islam by Edward Said, which is also a very important book on how Western main media cover the region and incidents in the region. So this is a kind of colonialism, no doubt, and Israel acts like a tool, a base, colonial base. Yet through their lobbies in the United States and Europe, they now are too powerful. They decide who could come into power and who could leave. Yet the people who are sitting in driver's seat, they are not in Israel. They are in the United States, as we have come to see nowadays. Now, when the incident happened in October 7, Americans and Europeans rushed into the region and they met Netanyahu and rest of the government, and they brought their aircraft carriers, ships, and etc.
Right, sir. So moving forward, I think after the 1973 war, the Camp David Accord happened in 1978, wherein for the first time the Palestinian leadership accepted the existence of Israel. How do you take that? Yasser Arafat basically went and signed the accords, I think.
I guess in 1978, it wasn't the Palestinians who accepted, it was the Egyptians who accepted. Can you clarify,
right,
sir?
Right. Yeah, right, sir. Yeah. It was Anwar Sadat, I think.
Actually, and his group from early 70s, they sensed that the Arabs are not very serious about Palestine, and they started thinking about some kind of political solution. And they proposed something called the 10 Points Program. But eventually it was Anwar Sadat, the president of the most powerful Arab countries, who took the initiative, visited Jerusalem, and he declared that he's willing to sign a peace agreement with Israel. And when we talk about the peace agreement between Arabs and in extension Muslim world and Egypt signing that agreement, the back of the Arab world is basically gone, because the biggest Arab countries in population and the strongest army, the most sophisticated old civilization is in Egypt. So if you take out Egypt, the rest of the Arab world, they become like the limbs of the body. There is no brain, no backbone. So what could the limbs do? And this is what exactly happened.
Great, sir. Yeah.
I guess in this case, in this scenario, when the Yom Kippur war happened, or I don't remember exactly in which war, Israel occupied the Sinai Peninsula. So
67.
Egypt, in return of getting the Sinai Peninsula, Egypt actually signed a perpetual peace treaty with Israel to getting back the land.
This is what they say, but now they have reclaimed Sinai Peninsula. What did they do about it? Egypt is already a huge country. They failed in development, they failed in economy, they failed in every respect. So what importance did the Sinai Peninsula add to the Egyptian state? This is a big question.
Right, sir.
No. Yeah.
So after that, after signing the Camp David Accord, the first Intifada happened in 1987. It was the first uprising by the Palestinians who felt that they were being betrayed by the Arab states and who decided to take matters into their hand. So this was the first Intifada, and the result we all know was not great, but at least it was the first uprising. And I think, yeah. So what's your take on that? The first Intifada and the uprising by the Palestinians.
The first Intifada was very important event in the history of the Palestinian people. because Palestinians actually came to a point, I'm talking about Palestinian population, that they almost felt that it is normal to have Israel there, you know. So people started working in Israel, befriending Israelis, making business with them, etc. When the first Intifada came, it actually changed the whole scenario or what was happening on the ground. So it reminded the Palestinian people that Israel is a colonial force and they should react accordingly. And also it led to the emergence of Hamas, which is now the most important power in the Palestinian scene. Although Hamas was already there under the name of Ikhwan al-Muslimun, Muslim Brotherhood, but Muslim Brotherhood from 1956, they didn't have much of military participation or resistance. They were more of social work. They concentrated on social work, education. But in 1987, they became the main organization in the Palestinian scene.
Right, sir. Yeah. And then after the first Intifada in 1993, probably, the Oslo Accord was signed with Yasser Arafat, wherein the Palestinian leadership for the first time accepted the existence of Israel. So, yeah, how do you take that, sir? What's your views on that?
Yeah, on the same question, sir. Continuing on the same question, Yasser Arafat was considered the founder of this Palestinian movement, as per se. So when that thing happened, the Oslo Accord happened, were Palestinians in agreement with him or were they opposed to him when this happened?
When people talk about Oslo, they tend to forget that the context, you know, the context is very important because at that point of time, you remember that the Soviet Union collapsed, and Soviet Union represented the leader of the leftists in this world. And if the right wings all over the world, they were against Palestine, they were against Muslims, it was a leftist who declared that they are against colonialism, Zionism, racism, and imperialism. So when the Soviet Union collapsed, you even notice that Indian policy changed. If you notice, Indian policy also changed, not only the Palestinian policy. And I told you that Yasser Arafat and his group from early 70s, they felt that the Arabs are not very serious about helping them in Palestine, and they took refuge in the Soviet Union and the Chinese. But gradually the Chinese became more engaged in diplomacy with the West, especially with Americans, and they lost their usual level of interest in Palestine. The Soviet Union eventually collapsed and Palestinians fell. And also the war, Saddam invaded Kuwait, and also the Arab world became in a huge mess. So Yasser Arafat thought that if we don't take the chance, these people will just liquidate everything and Palestinian people would vanish. I'm not saying this to justify what he did, because in my opinion, that when you face problems, you should be more adamant and steadfast, not to run away or go down. But this is the way usually politicians think. So he thought in that way.
Right, sir. Yeah. So, So as per the Oslo Accord, I think besides the recognition of Israel, there was also a provision that Israel would disengage from the areas designated as Palestinians, basically the West Bank and some part of the Gaza Strip, which some of which they did actually implement, but very late. Then we have in the 2000 the Camp David summit, wherein Yasser Arafat did not accept the offer presented to him by the Israelis and the Americans. So why do you think that was a failure, and what was exactly the offer that the Americans and the Israelis gave?
Americans and Israelis promised Arafat that they'll give two-state solution, that they have adopted two-state solution. But in fact, in reality, they were saying something and doing something else, because the Palestinians are supposed to build their states in the West Bank, the land which was occupied in 1967. But the real intention of the Israelis was buying more time to Judaize the West Bank, building more settlements, building more roads, bringing more Israeli settlers, up to the extent that now the Palestinian Authority controls only 6%, of mandate Palestine. So Yasser Arafat, at the end of his life, he realized this, and he backed up the second Intifada, or Al-Aqsa Intifada, and many people believe that the Israelis assassinated him because of that.
Yeah, right, sir. In fact, there was an investigation after his death that he was killed using polonium, which was found in his body. So this was he did not die a natural death. He was poisoned using polonium. So this was one thing.
Yeah,
but,
just for viewers clarity, polonium is basically used by many intelligence agencies to assassinate, because it's a very radioactive element and it causes cancer in 2 to 3 days, and no one survives it.
Right. So so this was the background. Basically, what Americans were offering in Camp David was nothing serious. They were not serious in understanding the sentiments, the rights of the Palestinians, and they were in nowhere interested doing justice to the Palestinians. So basically, what America has been able to and has managed to explain to its population that it was Yasser Arafat who did not accept the Camp David offer, and which is why the Palestinians are suffering. So on one hand, they are openly supporting Israel with everything they can, and on the other hand, they are also putting the blame on the Palestinian leadership, that it is because of Yasser Arafat and the Palestinian leadership that this issue is still a conflict, is still not been solved. So yeah, this was, I think, the background. So after that, after the second Intifada, the uprising that happened, and then in 2006, the elections happened in Gaza, wherein Hamas gained control. So Hamas, as we all know, is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. It was not basically a militant organization, but it was a resistance movement, both politically and also in terms of resisting through other means, which involved taking up arms as well. So what really changed? How did Hamas manage to win the Gaza elections in 2006, and how it is viewed overall, and how do you think how successful it has been in its approach?
Sir, before that, could you please explain, because Gaza was also occupied by Israelis, and they left Gaza unilaterally. So was it on purpose that they wanted to, have a land which they can attack and then they can use it in future? I mean, what was the reason of leaving Gaza when they were occupying it? And then you can proceed to the next question which Kamran Bhai asked.
Basically, Hamas, let's go back to the Ikhwan Muslimin. Why Ikhwan Muslimin was founded in first place? Because they felt that there is no Islamic state anymore. Ottoman Empire collapsed. and European colonial power, they are controlling all the Muslim states, so they should sit fast and fight back. And because of that, Ikhwan Muslimin, they were involved in all historical or points, not only in Palestine, also in other places. So that idea of resisting the occupation lies deep in the ideology and thought of Ikhwan Muslimin, and Hamas was part of Ikhwan Muslimin because basically Hamas is Ikhwan al-Muslimin in Palestine. So they defined themselves in this way. And the people who established Fatah, which was led by Arafat, they were also members of Ikhwan al-Muslimin. So this is a historical fact. But afterwards, they changed under the pressure of Arab regime, especially Nasser, who was very hard. He came very hard on Ikhwan al-Muslimin, and the Fatah leaders who basically were members of Ikhwan al-Muslimin, they said, we have nothing to do with Ikhwan al-Muslimin. And for that, Ikhwan al-Muslimin in Palestine, they took very long time to organize their ranks and turn again into resistance in 1987. And they gave themselves the name
1987,
of
yes.
Hamas, the Islamic Resistance Movement, Hamas. Otherwise, Hamas and Ikhwan al-Muslimin in Palestine, they're one and the same thing. And why Israel left from Gaza? Because Gaza people, they resisted, and Gaza was a very small, overpopulated place. Israeli population was, the Israeli army and security was facing a kind of continuous losses in Gaza. So finally, Sharon thought that why to take the trouble? We'll just turn it into a very big open prison, and these people will manage themselves by themselves. But and also that might lead to some kind of putting more burden on the Palestinian authority, because the burden previously was on the occupation, as the occupation forces, they have legal responsibility to provide and protect local population. But when they left Gaza Strip and they surrounded Gaza Strip, turned it into a very big prison, they could claim that they pulled out from Gaza and there is no such responsibility on their shoulders.
You're right, sir.
You also alluded to the elections, isn't it?
Yeah, right, sir. Yeah.
There was always a discussion, heated debate among resistance faction, including Hamas, that if you accept to enter in the political process, you accept to run for elections, and in that case, you accept Oslo Accords. So in that case, as if you are recognizing Israel. But Hamas always played on that disparity because they always said, no, elections represent the Palestinian people, although it is under the occupation and under Oslo Accord, and many people accused them of taking advantage of Oslo Accord without paying a price. But there were a lot of rumors and misconceptions about Hamas and the role of Hamas, how Hamas was founded, etc. All actually baseless, and you could read history more carefully to understand that this kind of accusation was popularized basically by other competing Palestinian factions, especially Fatah and the Palestinian Authority.
Right, sir. Yeah. So after the elections, I think consequently, each year in 2008, 2009, 10, 11, 12, and 14, there have been bombardments of Gaza by Israel, and local people have been, civilians have been killed, children have been massacred. And then there has been no outrage from the international community at all, especially when Israel blockaded Gaza, preventing all communication with the rest of the world, and not allowing even the food and medical supplies in proper quantities to the land. But in 2018, when border protests happened and Palestinians peacefully marched and protested near the borders of Gaza, several Palestinians, unarmed civilians, were killed, including paramedics, doctors, were killed. So all of that happened, and there was no attention, no outcry at all from the world. So how do you take that? And that there has been conflict each year. Each year, Israel is pounding Gaza, killing of civilians. And then when Palestinians are peacefully protesting in Gaza, there has been absolutely no coverage, hardly any coverage, and no interest from the rest of the world.
Yeah, that is to some extent accurate. But if we want to understand what happened in 2014 and 18, we have to look at the current confrontation, because they are repeating the same thing, you know. Luckily, this time we have X and Elon Musk to get us informed about what's happening in Palestine. If you look at the social media, which was the alternative for the mainstream media, it is all now under the control of the Zionist and imperial powers. They prevent anyone from sharing news and pictures, videos under different pretexts. So only now X, or previously Twitter, which you are able to share such information with the rest of the world. So they use the same tactics, and through the history of Palestine, Muslim countries and Arab countries were basically passive about what's happening in Palestine. And if you want to know how passive they are, just compare their reactions and their support for Palestine with the reactions and support of the Americans and Europeans for Israel. Americans, the president came and visited Israel, the British, the French, and they provided military aid, financial aid. The Arabs and Muslims are afraid just to issue a statement, you know, recognizing Hamas as a legitimate resistant movement.
Right.
I have a question here really quickly. You know, we have been mostly discussing about the what, but what has happened. But my question is more related to what should happen. So, like in that relation, do you think you mentioned Twitter and X and Elon Musk? Do you think it's that's what the main responsibility of, let's say, Muslims living in India? We feel the pain of our brothers in Palestine. Is that the best or the thing for us to do? Is try to bring out our voice as much as possible and make as much, let's say, noise on social media in some sense, so that to get this information out? Is that what, let's say, the resistance would most want from us?
Actually, I object to the idea of supporting. You are there not to support. You are directly affected by what is happening in Palestine and in the region. Muslims of India and Muslims everywhere, and the rest of Asians, Africans, are directly affected with the events. So the idea that I want to support is wrong in principle. It is something like donating to a beggar in front of the mosque. You know, you give him 5 rupees and you feel very happy about yourself. You feel very satisfied. This is not about that. You could imagine that there is an army attacking your neighbor, a gang attacking your neighbor, and eventually it will come to your house. So how would you react about that? So this is the main issue. It is your battle, your war. You have to think about it and how to get prepared and how to work hard to win. Because this is also a battle and a war for the soul of humanity. We have to confront racism and colonialism, imperialism, which actually steals the souls of everyone. See what we have come to now. They are calling for gender policy, and they want to enforce that on everyone, and etc. They actually, whatever is done in Palestine is picked up by other regimes, implanted on other Muslims, even in far countries. And you have to understand that and think in ways to confront such aggression not only in Islam and Muslims, but rather on all humanity.
Right, sir. Totally agreed. In fact, we have
100% agreed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So lots of parallels between the Israeli regime, Zionist regime, and between the regime that we have currently in India. The bulldozing of houses was not something common here. Now we see lots of Muslim houses being demolished, just as Israel does.
Yeah, you can say actually this actually started in Palestine. They started to bulldoze their houses, and similar things, all of us know have happened in India. So yeah, it's not something the regime is very friendly. Everyone knows this.
Yeah.
And like Sir said, that this is not necessarily just a Palestinian issue. This is something enemies knocking at our brother's place, and it is soon coming here. So yeah,
it is the issue of all of us, all peace-loving and justice-loving people. So, sir, moving forward, we all know that there was a lot of happening in Palestine, in the occupied lands, in Gaza. There was a blockade. People were desperate for even basic needs. There were settler gangs kicking out Palestinian people from the West Bank. There were new settlements being built. I have seen videos of old ladies being kicked by the Israeli army, desecration of our holy lands, especially Al-Aqsa. And recently, there was also a video of Netanyahu showing a map in which he shows that entire region, including the Palestinian regions of West Bank and Gaza, as Israel country. So all of that was in the background, and Israel has been pounding Gaza without any excuse as well. So when the attacks happened on October 7, all this outcry suddenly begins as if nothing was happening, and all of this came in a void, in a vacuum. So as has been pointed out even by the UN chief, that this attack was not something which was in vacuum. This has a background. So we see the hypocrisy of those in power, that when the occupier is Israel, the attacker is Israel, they simply don't pay any attention at all. And when the resistance does something, it is all of a sudden a very big matter, and all of a sudden there's a huge outcry. So can you take us through what exactly made the resistance choose this timing? I know why did they do this attack. I know, we all know the background. We don't want any explanations on that. I just want to understand this timing. Why did they choose this timing on the attacks?
Sir, before you proceed, just because this question is very common about the timing, because many people say that since the the normalization between Saudi and Israel was going on, so this has been done to derail it. Is there some merit in that, or it's just the propaganda of the West?
Is the normalization with Israel something good? The Israelis, they tried to,
on the face of it, not at all.
The strategy was that they wanted to surpass the Palestinians and leave them behind, and basically leave them alone, and actually control the whole Palestinian land, other Arab countries. Is this something good?
No.
So, no, it's not. It's not. It's definitely not good.
Your arm can't be an enemy with someone, and the left hand is friends, but your right hand is they're cutting your right hand. Right. It can't be the case. Yes.
I don't think that this is the case because they themselves, Hamas leaders, told us that they were preparing for this at least for the last 2 years or 3 years. And they chose this timing because they thought that the Israeli government was planning to make a major offensive against Gaza. And so they basically they wanted um, to have the advantage of the surprise, and
Okay.
their aim was to destroy that military division which was surrounding Gaza, which is called the Gaza division in the Israeli army. This is a case.
Yeah. So how do you think this will proceed from here? After the attacks, we have seen that Israel has been attacking common people, common civilians, and there have been lots of casualties. Hospitals have been attacked, and all of the Gaza is most of it at least has become almost like a rubble. And there has been recently internet connectivity also disabled. So how do you think this will proceed? We all know that Gaza, Israel, if it wants to enter Gaza, it will face tough resistance, and which is why it is still avoiding any major ground invasion. But the attacks have been continued, and around 8,000 people have been killed so far. How do you think this would end, or where will it go? What's the end game here for Israel?
Basically, if you want to think like a political scientist or a politician, you'll say that this is a losing confrontation. But this is not the case in Palestinian mentality because we are people under occupation and we are ready to die or live free. So living in slavery and under occupation is worse than dying. Because of that, you see that the Palestinians in Gaza, although they suffered a lot of losses in lives, building, everything, they still want to resist, and that they are becoming more adamant to face the occupation. So from our point of view, that we have one way forward. The whole world should acknowledge our right to freedom and independent state. No other option. We know that they can't destroy us. They could inflict a lot of damage and losses on us, but they can't destroy us simply because the Palestinians, they are not cut off from a tree. They are not a branch cut off from a tree. They are part of a very huge tree, which is a tree of Islam, and there are about 2 billion Muslims now in the whole world.
Right, sir. Exactly.
Yes, yes, you are absolutely right, because it's not just a Palestinian issue. It's about it's our issue. It's every Muslim's issue, because Al-Aqsa was our first Qibla. It is a site which is allowed for us to go. It is only three of the sites we can go for pilgrimage to Makkah, Medina, and Al-Aqsa. So whatever they do, even if they are able to, inflict heavy damages, they will never be able to understand that what it means to us and what it has meant to us.
Yeah.
So in this regard, many people have asked this question, and you see it in the media that Hamas, the organization, it has been propped up by Iran, because the Arab states have not supported it. So Iran has supported it. There is this also dimension that why is Iran so interested? Is it, just a geopolitical game for it, or it is genuinely interested in it? I mean, since after the Iranian Revolution in 1978, I guess, I exactly don't remember the date. After the Iranian Revolution, is it genuinely interested in liberating of Palestine, or it is just a game for it?
I can't answer this question. I don't know how to imagine whether they are genuinely interested or not. But apparently
I mean,
they are.
you can't answer it because you don't know their intentions, but it just goes around in the Muslim world that Iran is very vocal about it, and but it hasn't done anything to support.
No,
Unfortunately.
actually, Iran made a lot of things to support. The Iran provided arms and financial support for the the Palestinian resistance movement, and
Yes,
they are very vocal and very brave in their political stance. Whether it is enough or not, this is not the question. Whether it is genuine or not, we can't decide about that. But what about other Muslim countries and other Arab countries? Let them do
certainly.
whatever Iran is doing, and after that, they could criticize Iran in the way they like.
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
Yeah.
We should appreciate Iran for whatever help they have done, because in comparison to most of the rest of the Muslim world, they have certainly been at the forefront. And sectarianism should be the last thing on anyone's mind in this regard. This is one ummah.
Right.
So also
Absolutely.
there is a question in this. Some people have asked the question that the current Netanyahu government, this current Netanyahu government is the most being supported by the most right wing Zionist. I mean, it is the most right wing Zionist government, and is it more specifically more ultra orthodox and more cruel than the other governments which have been there?
Um, the Orthodox right-wing Jews, they are not more cruel. All of them are cruel. Americans are cruel. It's not about religion. It's about political objectives. See what Americans did in Iraq. They killed more than 1 million Iraqi child. They killed millions of all over the world. They are not Jews.
Yeah.
Israelis are from the same school and same thought. They're all thinking in the same way. So it's not about religion, in my opinion. It's about ideology, which is basically a racist colonial ideology. So what's happening in Israel has been always happening. But now the West feels that those who have come into power, they have religious leaning, and they are not very much happy about that, because in the Western world they're basically atheists. They don't believe in God or religion, etc.
Yes.
Because of that, they are not very happy with the current Israeli elite. Otherwise, they are equally criminal.
Right, sir.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
That is
So
the real fight, isn't it? Between the God-fearing men and the ones who don't care about that.
Right, sir.
We should obviously, on some level, we have to remember that Al-Aqsa, that site is holy to all three Abrahamic religions. On a very basic level, none of the three religions fundamentally teach that the others should be pushed out. Uh, Really becomes a political issue at the end of the day, and certainly the atheists do take the liberal secular West takes a lot of advantages of these. Creating these differences and just planting them in this kind of a way among us. Yeah.
Right, sir. So moving forward, sir, I wanted to know your views on the idea of having a two-state solution, and whether two-state solution is still a reality. Can it still happen, or what's your take on two-state solution?
Actually, I think we should not waste time discussing this dead idea. This is dead. So it has been long dead. There is one solution only now. We have to fight against Zionism, racism, colonialism. That's the end of the story. And see now the Americans, Europeans, they have come to the region with huge armies, not just for Gaza. They want to recolonize the whole region. They want to control the flow of oil and power to China, and also their eyes are at Russia. They want to threaten and intimidate every person and every country in the whole region. They're talking that they want to prevent the war from expanding to a regional war. But in fact, they made it into an international war. They brought France, Germany, UK, and the US. It's a global international coalition against the Muslim world and this part of the world. So it's already a world war. It's not only a regional war.
Great, sir. So, as you said, so the other solution, the other prospect that people talk about is having one state, which means having just discussing the possibility, how practical is that, whether Israel can exist as one state wherein it gives equal rights to Palestinians. Can it ever happen? And whether the Palestinians who have been displaced, who are in millions, be allowed to return to their homelands. So in that case, the Jews won't be the majority population of Israel.
Yeah,
So can Israel function as an actual democracy, which it claims to be? Because in order to become a democracy, a true democracy, it should give equal rights to all its citizens. So on the one hand, they talk about having one state solution and becoming a democracy, being a democracy, while on the other hand, they talk about apartheid laws, separate laws for the non-Jew population and the Jewish population.
Brother, in my opinion, what happened in October 7th represent the end of Israel. And
Inshallah.
Israel will never recover
Inshallah.
from this.
Inshallah.
Even if they wipe out the whole Gaza Strip. No, it's not only about Palestinians. They failed in their mission. They are supposed to be here as a colonial base to control every country, deter every country in the region. They failed miserably in that mission, colonial mission.
Yes.
Now the Americans had to come to the region to do the job themselves. So why Israel? You have to think that if before October 7th, the internal scene in Israel was in such a mess that even Europeans, Americans intervened to solve internal problems. It's only now, if things just stop for a few days, we will see Israelis fighting on TV channels and screens, because the internal scene in Israel is so bad, and it has become so, they have lost confidence in Israel as a safe haven for Jews, that basically many Jews will think of migrating to their home countries from Israel. So in my opinion, now there is a spiral. Israel has entered that spiral, and eventually in a few years, Israel in the way we know it now will cease to exist.
Inshallah.
Yes. You are, I mean, inshallah, this could be the beginning. This could be the beginning, and we all hope that it is the beginning.
Inshallah.
So one thing it has surely done is that it has broken the aura of invincibility. Right. I mean, Israel used to, flaunt its aura that we are undefeated and we are surrounded by enemies, even then we are surviving. But actually, Israel was never surrounded by enemies. It's the three states which surround it: Egypt, the Saudi, and Jordan. These are actually the first defenders of Israel. These are the first defenders of Israel. It is because of these states that Israel is existing in the first place. Am I correct, sir?
I don't want to comment on this.
So
that's fair enough.
Just one thing, sir. Before inviting you to this talk, we were feeling that we will express our sympathy, or maybe we'll, we'll show that we are in solidarity with the Palestinians. But after hearing you, we are feeling motivated, alhamdulillah. So you seem to be an example.
I have
for
to
us.
tell you, sir. I have to tell you, sir, my feeling. I mean, there is a problem in my family. But since 7th of October, I have forgotten everything. Every day, every moment, I'm thinking about what is happening there. and
Okay.
why it is
Same for
happening,
me.
the kind of images,
Yeah.
the kind
Yes.
of images that are coming from there, it
Yeah.
makes me sick to my stomach. And
Yeah.
but the other thing which I see, that whenever something bad is happening, even then our brothers are praising Allah. So
Alhamdulillah. Yeah.
it brings tears to my eyes. Even right now, even now, it is bringing tears to my eyes. They are living under, they are literally, bombs are raining on them. Even then, they are praising Allah. They are saying that we are the chosen one, we are the blessed people.
Yes.
So it also increases my iman that
Alhamdulillah.
they are suffering from this. Even then, there is not a single word that they say why this is happening to us. And
Yes.
that's the kind of iman I guess every Muslim should have.
This is actually one reason why we should always read Quran every day. And
Yes.
not that kind of reading, that mindless reading. You should
Yes.
just hold a pen or a pencil, read Quran as if you are looking for something. You have to study every word and think about every word. And if you know Arabic, that would be even better, you know. But if you don't know Arabic, then it is a big loss for you.
It is, that certainly, isn't it?
Sir, although the time has exceeded by 2 minutes, we would request you, if you have time, to for few more minutes, so that we can take up few questions that are there.
Yeah, sure, but make it quick because I have
Sure.
to pray Dhuhr now. It is
Yeah.
Dhuhr time.
Okay.
I'm
Sure, sir.
already
Yeah.
late for
So
prayer.
one of the questions has come up regarding the boycott. After every war with Israel, whenever Israel attacks, all across the Muslim world, people talk about boycotting McDonald's, talk about boycotting Starbucks. How effective is this boycott? The BDS movement, how do you think whether we should boycott, or how effective is this? Your take on that?
I think it's very important, extremely
Mm.
important. You know, we should take the risk. This is the title. They are paying a very heavy price on behalf of all of us. We should stop being cowards and take the risk and stand and fight. This is the only solution. We fight in the best way we know.
Right, sir.
How we would fight, everyone should decide for himself.
Right, sir.
Certainly.
So there is one question. We see that there is some unity between the Palestinian factions. In fact, the PLO officials are also speaking, sort of defending the actions of Hamas. This was not probably the case before this October 7 attack. So lots of people are asking, why don't Hamas become the official army of the state of Palestine? Why don't they declare that Hamas or the Qassam Brigade is the official army of the state of Palestine?
No, the PLO and the PA, they are different story. So they are compelled to take this stand. Otherwise, the Palestinian people will shun them, you know? So, but deep in themselves, the project is completely different. They won't tolerate neither Qassam nor Hamas, for that matter. So we should not have illusions about that.
Okay. So next question is regarding the role of Egypt. People are asking, why does Egypt not open and allow the aid to flow in freely from its Rafah crossing? Why it is dependent on Israel to allow this many trucks of aid? So why doesn't Egypt allow the free flow of aid material and all from the Rafah crossing?
Well, we have to know that the Arab regimes and states in general, they are very fragile states. And another reason that they see Hamas as part of the Islamic movement, and they fear Islamic movement more than they fear Israel. They hate Islamic movements more than anybody else. So in that way, Islamic movement is a common enemy for the Arab states and Israel as well. In that sense, they are not very encouraged to help Hamas to win in Gaza. They are very embarrassed in front of the Arab nation, Muslim Ummah, their own people, but they are not very keen on making Hamas win this kind of war.
Right, sir.
Yes,
So
it might expose them. Yes, that makes sense.
So one question is in the chat regarding the whether if Israel is allowed to exist, if Israel exists as a state, do you think it has plans to expand beyond its current borders, beyond beyond the current designated area which we call as Palestine? Will it go beyond into Sinai and into Jordan or into Syria? Are there talks, plans of Greater Israel, which the colonizers have in mind?
There is no such horizon for this. Israel now is dying, gradually dying. It is losing. They were refusing to give any part of the land which was occupied in 1967, didn't they? But now the Al-Qassam Brigade and Hamas occupied, reclaimed lands which were occupied in 1948.
Mhm.
So it brought the whole conflict to the 0 point.
Right,
So
Yes.
talking about Israel as if nothing happened on October 7th is not realistic nor practical.
right, sir. Yeah.
Makes sense.
So, just one question, sir. There are talks from the Israeli leadership that they will wipe out Hamas, they will eliminate Hamas, they will bomb all the tunnels, and whether it how many lives it takes, it doesn't matter to them. So, do you? We all know that Hamas is not separate from the struggle of Palestinians. It's a part of the
Yes.
people. So, do you think? What do you think they can do at max? How much damage could they really cast on the Palestinians and on Hamas in
I'll
the
just say one
one
thing.
scenario? Yeah.
I'll just say
Now
one
this
thing. You said Kamran said that they don't care about how many lives they lose. They certainly do. This is the difference, isn't it? The resistance actually does not care about this world. They are doing it for the sake of justice. But the Zionists, they care about this world. When they lose people, it hurts them more. So no, they will not go as far as we can.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Actually,
sir.
it's not my opinion or your opinion. It's what they are saying. Now, in the first day, they said something, and gradually now they are getting down the tree, you know? Now they claim something very big, and now gradually they're going back, you know? Initially they said that they're going to wipe out Hamas, they're going to do this and that. But yesterday, if you listen to Netanyahu, to the Minister of Defense, to the Chief of Army Staff, they all talked about limiting the military capabilities of Hamas, because everyone else told them that the goals which you have put are impractical and impossible. You cannot eliminate Hamas, and you cannot kill all the Palestinians in Gaza Strip. Nobody will endorse that, and it is impossible to happen. So now they are trying to backtrack, and they are talking about negotiations and the prisoners of war, etc.
Right, sir. Yeah. Jazakallah khair, sir, for this motivating talk. We are really delighted for this. Actually, since the start of this conflict, we have had sentiments shared among us that we are feeling very low. We want to do something for our brothers who are being pounded upon mercilessly. So we wanted to have this session so that people know the issue. Many of us don't exactly know what happened, what is the historic context. So we wanted to have something like this. But the things that you brought in this talk are really beyond what we intended to do. We are really
Yeah.
feeling motivated, and our iman is also has increased a bit hearing you, alhamdulillah. So this has been really good to hear you, sir.
Thank you,
Yeah.
brothers.
Jazakallah khair, sir, for attending this.
Hope we will meet, inshallah, in India itself very soon.
Inshallah, sir.
Inshallah.
We'll love
Looking
to be
forward to see you, sir.
Yeah, we'd love to host you also. We'd love to have you and hear you more.
Certainly. RT is also okay, sir.
Yeah.
We
I
saw you
would
try.
like to excuse all of you because now it is very late for me. I have to go
Sure, sir.
late.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Allah, make
Jazakallah
dua for Palestine, and also remember the people of Gaza in your prayers. Inshallah, we will all be victorious.
Inshallah.
Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa
Alaikum
rahmatullahi wa
assalam wa
barakatuh.
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum. So friends, I think we are going to close this session. So if someone wants to, Eraz Bhai or Shadman Bhai, you want to make any final comments, we still can. I think there are all the questions taken up from the chat, but I think few are there. I would like to read some of the questions before we close this. So Anis Bhai says, I see this first time all colonial powers openly supporting, showing this war. I think they were helping Israel internally for last 75 years. Now they come up openly this direct. I don't see any country except Iran. What we can expect something from Afghanistan. So yeah, people want Muslim countries to help and support, but as we know, the regimes in most countries are not supportive. They are not free. They are not independent. So yeah, any final comments, Ehraz Bhai, or anyone who wants to make, we can have, yeah, before we close this.
Are you answering this question? I mean, I don't know.
No, I think this has been covered. He has said that Muslim regimes are not in a position to support. They are, they are not proper popular governments. They are just puppet governments in most places. Yeah. You want to have something? Share something, Eras?
No. I guess everything has been covered, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair, brothers, for attending this session. We will upload this in few days' time, and then after some edits, you can follow us on our YouTube channel as well, QIC. We would also share the link with you all in the mail. Jazakallah khair. We will close this session now. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.